We got to look up, child. Lift your eyes from the appearance of limitation and lift up to that presence and activity of spirit that is all around us and within us. Especially nowadays, we have to keep lifting up our eyes, don't we? Yeah, because there's a lot going on in the world, there's a lot going on in our lives. That's why we have these meetings regularly, to remind ourselves of the truth, to remember the truth. And so today we're talking about inspiring others. How many of you would like to be a greater inspiration to other people in your life? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're continuing with Dr. Wayne Dyer's, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer's book, Living Inspired, Your Ultimate Calling. Wonderful book. And I think one of the most important things to being inspiring to others is to be inspired ourselves, right? Doesn't it make sense? How can you inspire others if you're not inspired, right? We can only give what we have. If you have a nickel, that's all you can give away. And so it's important to continually keep ourselves inspired. What do you do to inspire yourself? Because there's a lot of energies around us, right? There's a lot of other stuff going on in the world. We live in a secular world nowadays. Anybody notice? I think maybe it started with my generation. I don't know. I was thinking that this morning. Maybe it was my generation, because my parents and their parents, everybody went to church, or synagogue or temple or wherever they went. And then my generation, I went to the golf course on a Sunday morning, or I went on holidays to synagogue when I was growing up. That's what we did. Now, I'd pray once in a while, but not very often. And I believed in God, but I didn't realize it was something that could be part of my daily life. And so you had people of my parents' generation who were constantly being reminded every week of something that would inspire them, hopefully. I don't know about you, but I have to regularly inspire myself. I have to do things regularly to remain inspired. How many of you are like that? I have prayer time a couple times a day. I read inspirational stuff most every day, because I need to continually remind myself of what it's about and what life is about. Because, we're not just affected, we're going to talk about next week how to transcend uninspired energy, but we're impacted not only by what we hear and see, but we're impacted by energy, right? Everyone's giving off energy. And you can't help, because we're part of one mind, you can't help but be impacted by the collective energy. And so it's important to continually re-inspire oneself. What do you do to inspire yourself? Obviously, you're here listening to this message or watching that. That's wonderful. You're doing something to encourage, inspire yourself. I think every day doing something, some kind of reading, some kind of prayer. In order to inspire others, we've got to be inspired ourselves. It's because it's the energy we put off that's the most important thing. It's not our words. It's not giving people lectures, actually. It's what we send out. Wayne Dyer on page 143, he says, spiritual teachers have raised the vibrational frequency of their daily life to a point where they're able to provide inspiration to others merely by their presence. And this is the standard to which we need to aspire. By our presence. And that's what we're talking about today, is how do we live this every day so that we can inspire ourselves and inspire others. The things we're talking about today are to help us continue to be in spirit. That's inspiration, is to be in spirit, and to be able to inspire others as well. Think of some of the most inspiring people you know. Let's go back to Jesus, for instance. Jesus was a very inspiring guy, right? If he wasn't, nobody would have listened to what he had to say or followed him. There's one instance, this is a great example of how where your consciousness is impacts others. He was on his way somewhere, and there was a lady that said she had a flow of blood for many years. And it says that she said to herself, if I could only touch the hem of his garment, then I'll be healed. So he was walking, he wasn't even aware of her, but he sensed her presence, and he said, who touched me? And she was healed. She had touched his consciousness. She had touched where he was in consciousness. He was simply going somewhere, wasn't even aware of her until she touched his consciousness. She sensed his faith. She sensed what he was all about and was uplifted by that. Emily Cady, the author of Lessons in Truth, a Unity classic book, she said, if you take time daily in the silence, harmony will be established in your home. Why? By what you're tuning into on a daily basis. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about expressing, being it, not just words, not just thoughts. Gandhi, they say, was such a person where he could enter a room and peace would be established in that room. Wow. Why is that? It's because he was living that consciousness. He was living in daily prayer and daily attunement with spirit, daily doing the things we're going to talk about today. So being that, and the more we learn, the more we apply, the more we grow in ourselves, the more we become an inspiration to others. I love this quote by Joel Goldsmith, who was a healer and an author. He said, the real purpose of teachers, books, and teachings is to lead us back to the kingdom of God within ourselves. That's what it's all about. That's what the teachings, the teachers, the books is all about, getting us back in touch with our spiritual nature. That's what it's all about. Is it helping us do that? That's the key. So let's talk about some of the ways we can be an inspiration, some other ways. That is, being kind and generous inspires others. Dr. Dyer tells the story of one day recently when he was writing the book. He found himself in a food court with his 3 children, and a young man was at the McDonald's, and he had a tray full of hamburgers and fries, and he tripped, and it all went to the ground. And the parents ran forth to help him, and the manager graciously gave him all the food back without any charge. But what Dr. Dyer noticed is that the food still remained on the floor, and the greasy hamburgers and french fries were a hazard. And the parents weren't cleaning it up. The McDonald's staff weren't cleaning it up. So Dr. Dyer took a tray, went over, and picked up the food, and then quietly went back to his seat and never mentioned it. A few minutes later, about 10 minutes later, a lady had been observing this, and she came over to the table, and she said to his daughter, she said, ladies, did you see what your father just did? He just set an example for all of us of what a good citizen is. He went and he cleaned up this stuff, and I'm inspired by it, and I hope you are too. So he says he had no intention of, he wanted to remove a hazard from the McDonald's, and he did his work. Now, what's interesting about that is maybe other people thought, I didn't spill it. Why should I clean it up? He just did it because it needed to be done. And when we do things kindly or out of generosity, other people see us and they are inspired by that, right? How can we do this on a daily basis of being generous and being kind, giving of ourselves, giving of our money, giving of our possessions in whatever ways we're guided to be generous? My mom was generous like that. She, if someone admired something that she was wearing, it wasn't uncommon for her to just take it off and give it to the person. It was pretty cool, wasn't it? She just, oh, you like, okay, here. Now, don't anybody be telling me you like anything I'm wearing today, because that didn't run in the family as far as clothes go. Don't be eyeing my golf clubs, because you ain't getting those either. But no, being kind, being generous on a subway, on a bus, somebody who looks like they need the seat more than we do, considering offering that seat or that position, right? Others seeing that example will go, at first they might think, I'm not giving my seat up, nobody else is. But when they see someone else do it, then it inspires their higher nature to go, maybe I'll do that next time, right? How many of you have done that before? You were on a bus or on a subway or did something. Everybody here, I'm sure. I'm inspiring us, encouraging us to do it more often. In fact, Dr. Dyer says every day for 2 weeks, do something generous, preferably for a stranger, and that will develop the habit of giving. We said earlier in this series the idea of, first thing in the morning, thinking about who can I be a blessing to today? Who can I do something good for without expecting anything in return? Right? Then others see that and they're inspired by it. We see it in catastrophes, right? Hurricanes, wars, tornadoes, different things, earthquakes, where strangers do kind things for other people. That higher nature comes out of them, doesn't it? Being kind. Mother Teresa, I remember years ago, Mother Teresa said something about being thoughtful is the beginning of being Christ-like. Being thoughtful. Really, we can read all kinds of metaphysics. We can study stuff and, meditate and all that, but being kind, being thoughtful, being generous inspires us and we inspire others. We feel good about ourselves. Feeling good is feeling God. Isn't that what we've been saying? Feeling good is feeling God. Being kind, being thoughtful, being generous, and making it a habit. That's how we can be inspiring to others. Gratitude inspires others. Dr. Dyer says, I start every day being grateful. One of the things I've been practicing pretty regularly these days is recognizing that I'm on a planet where this is the only place things are happening. They're not happening anywhere else. There's nowhere else that we're aware of where anything's happening. It's happening here, though. And I get to experience it. Because I'm alive, I get to do whatever I'm doing. Right? Yes. And also recognizing more and more, appreciating what a miracle and a wonder this body and brain is. Right? It's a miracle. It's a wonder. The fact that we can raise our arm up. Yes. The fact that you can see. Yes. The fact that everything that we can do, it is a wonder. But we can take it for granted so easily. Yes. Take it for granted because we look around and we just forget. So it's important to remind ourselves. Gratitude. One of the things that Dr. Dyer points out is that some of the peak performers that he has met in life, some of the top superstars in life are people of gratitude. You know, when they reach for the statuette or the trophy, many of them thank God. They thank God for the ability to sing, to write, to perform, to do whatever they do, which shows humility, doesn't it? Humility rather than arrogance, rather than pomposity. They express something higher than themselves. And that's inspiring, isn't it? Number one golfer in the world today, his last name is Scheffler. In fact, he's leading a tournament. Tiger Woods is sponsoring a tournament in the Bahamas this weekend. And the winner, the leader, Scottie Scheffler, number one golfer in the world, is known for his faith in God. That is a center point in his life. When he was going to play, he was playing in the Masters. He was number one in the world a couple of years ago, and he was going to play in the Masters. And he was nervous. He was like, I don't know if I can do. He was crying, actually. I don't know if I can, pull this off. He was leading. I don't know if I can pull this off, all the pressure. And his wife said, honey, if it's your time to win this tournament, you'll win the tournament. Let's have faith in God. Let's trust. Gratitude, acknowledging there's a source of power bigger than ourselves. A humility, right? I was watching the documentary. I watched the documentary Sly about Sylvester Stallone on Netflix. And I was very inspired by it. And he's a spiritual guy. Now, I've heard his life hasn't been all that, beautiful, but whose life has been perfectly beautiful. But he's had faith. He's seen Spirit's activity in his life, working in his life. And it's quite of an inspiring story. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back and watch Rocky 1. I went back and watched Rocky 1, and then I'm like, I'm going to watch Rocky 2. And one of the things I noticed in those movies is the impact of faith. Because, especially in Rocky 2, he's fighting Apollo for the second time. And Apollo Creed is all about, look at me, I'm going to beat you, Sylvester, I'm going to knock you out. It's all about him. What is Rocky doing? Big Rocky, he's tough and all this. He's on his knees praying in the corner. And you can see that contrast between ego, me, and Rocky humbly praying. That difference, right? Gratitude lifts us beyond the ego and helps us recognize Spirit. In fact, Muhammad Ali, I think Apollo was created after Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest fighters of all time, greatest athletes of all time, was a man of faith. A man of faith. Gratitude inspires others. It's a humble thing. Listening inspires others. Listening inspires others. I like what Dr. Dyer has to say about listening. He says, as ironic as it may sound, we're far more inspiring to others when we're willing to listen than when we're giving them advice. Do I have to read that one again? Huh? Right? We're more inspiring when we're listening than when we're giving people advice. How many good listeners do you have in your life? Is there anybody who, when you talk to them, you feel understood after? You feel like you've been heard. They got you. If you have somebody like that in your life, you're very fortunate. But let's ask this question. Are you that for someone else in your life? Are you that for other people? Because it's rare to have a good listener. Everybody wants to be understood. Everybody wants people to understand them. Everybody is talking, trying to impress everybody else, trying to get everybody else to understand them, to appreciate them. Dale Carnegie said you can win more friends in 1 hour by showing interest in somebody else than you can a year of trying to impress everybody else. Listening helps people. There was a study many years ago where they were saying that a lay person, a non-trained psychologist who was trained in listening, was very beneficial compared to a trained psychologist. It was very beneficial. Someone trained to be a good listener for other people. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do, is to really learn to listen to another person. When's the last time you listened to someone really without giving them advice? I was listening to a podcast yesterday, which I like. I love the guy on it. But I noticed that every time the other host was talking, this guy wasn't really listening. He was thinking about what he was going to say. Now, that's okay for a podcast, but it's not really listening when it comes to one-on-one. Here's some bad ways. Here's some non-listening ways. Now, the preacher went from preaching to meddling now, right? Thinking about what we're going to say. That's not listening. Thinking about how we're going to respond. That's not listening. Analyzing whether we agree with what they're saying or not. That's not listening. Judging what they're saying. That's not listening. Sharing our autobiography of what we think they ought to do. That's not listening. Listening is, let me put myself in your shoes and let what you're going to tell me, let me be open to being changed by what you tell me. Not let me see how I can contradict what you're telling me. Let me analyze what you're telling me to see if I agree with you or not. No. Let me really hear what you're saying and be open enough to be changed by what you're saying. I may not agree with it ultimately, but I allowed it to come in. Now, how many people do you know do that? We don't even see it with our top politicians. The people we've given leadership to in this country don't even do that. Wow. Wow. It's not easy, though. It's not easy. We want to fix. We want to make over. And yet, the way we can really be inspiring is to really let someone be heard. I love his analogy that when you're listened to, it's almost like the same thing as when you pray. When you pray and you're not expecting an answer, you're not expecting something to fall down from heaven, but you feel like somebody cares and is listening to you. Isn't it true? When you pray, you feel like there's someone there who cares and is listening. Guess what? We can do that for other people. When we listen, then they feel that somebody cares. They feel a connection. The late Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, quoting a lot of dead people today, aren't I? Well, their words still live on, aren't they? He said, people need psychological air. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. People need psychological air before they can hear what we have to say. And if we let them be heard and understood, now they may want to know what we actually think. I'm a little bolder than I used to. Now sometimes I'll ask people, I'll say, would you like to hear what I think on that? Would you like to hear my point of view? And sometimes people say, yeah, I'd like to hear that. But a lot of times people just need air. They don't need to hear what we have to say. Why? Because God is within them and they have their own answers. They have their own answers. Or they have things they need to learn. It's like if they don't want to hear what you have to say, fine. Let's trust that they're on a journey of growth. They'll learn from their experiences. And by being heard, they'll have a greater clarity of mind to learn from their experiences. They'll feel a sense, and you can tell sometimes when you're listening to someone, they notice they might go, ah. They might sigh. It's like a sigh of relief. Wow, you're giving them psychological air. Dr. Dyer says, when you're tempted, and boy, we can all use this. Unfortunately, sometimes I think I interrupt a little too often the last few years, but do you ever do that? Apparently, that's a real popular pet peeve of people, is being interrupted. And he gives this advice. It's from Archie Bunker. Stifle yourself. Remember Archie Bunker, All in the Family? He says, imagine those words coming into your mind when you're about to interrupt somebody or give them advice. Stifle yourself. I like that. Imagine it coming up. Stifle yourself. I'm better when people have a problem or something, but when I'm with, employees and people I'm working with, it's a little different. But I think we can all have the reminder, stifle yourself. So how can we be inspiring? 1, be kind and generous. 2, gratitude inspires others. Listening inspires others. Being at peace inspires others. I'm really enjoying this book because he quotes a lot of people that I initially experienced in my beginning of my journey, and they're still meaningful to me. He talks about meeting Swami Satchidananda, the late Swami Satchidananda. Anyone here or online ever in the presence of Swami Satchidananda? Yes? Cool. Anyone else? Well, like Wayne Dyer, I felt a tremendous sense of peace and power in the presence of Swami Satchidananda. There was something about him that radiated. And Dr. Dyer was so inspired, he went and looked up, he bought a book called Beyond Words, which I recommend. When I was new on the journey, that book was extremely helpful to me. It's great for secular-minded people who are not used to faith. It's great for people who are searching. I know I was, and at that time, I was lost, and I was looking, and I wasn't going to believe in something that I couldn't believe in, and that book helped me develop an understanding of God that I could embrace. Here's what Satchidananda says about peace. He says, if anybody asks me, what is your philosophy of God? I say, peace is my God. If they ask, where is he? I reply, he is in me and he is everywhere. He is all peaceful. He is all serenity. He is to be felt and experienced within oneself. That's where God is, within ourselves. So what was your experience? Did you sense something around Satchidananda? They can't hear you, so I'm going to have to encapsulate it briefly. Many years ago you experienced him. Yeah. Did he have a sense of peace about him? Yes. And a great sense of humor. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was joyous. He was peaceful. Yeah, Swami Satchidananda. And you could feel it. Peacefulness. Peacefulness. Having that sense of peacefulness. What can we do to be peaceful? Any thoughts? What can we do to be more peaceful in our life? Pray more?
Yes, pray more, meditate.
Meditate? Breathe. That's good. Let's take a nice deep breath. Breathing is good. Watching your breath, bringing your awareness to the flow of your breath is a wonderful way to soothe the brain, the old brain that goes back to millions of years ago when we were surrounded by dangerous predators, is very active and can get stirred up very easily. And so just watching your breathing, flowing in and out, can help to soothe that part of your brain. And taking time daily to be still and quiet, to be infused with peace. It makes a difference. Dr. Dyer says, take some time every day to be still and quiet and notice how people will respond to you. Notice how the people who were antagonistic to you before or, more conflictual with you before, how they are different when you are more peaceful. Make sense? Whereas other people who are belligerent and angry, what kind of vibrations do they attract in their life? Always some kind of problem. You know anybody who's always there's some problem going on? There's always some kind of conflict in their life, something going on. Why? Is it because they're peaceful? Probably not. No, probably not. They're feeding the conflict. There you could say they're attracting the conflict, right? Being more peaceful inspires other people. So what are we talking about? We're talking about being inspiring, aren't we? We're talking about being kind. We're talking about being generous. We're talking about being grateful. We're talking about being a person who listens. We're talking about being peaceful, And then he says, living passionately inspires other people. Living passionately. Being excited, enthusiastic about whatever you do inspires others. Can you think of somebody who is passionate about what they do? Name somebody, if you're online, who is in your life that they're enthusiastic about what they do. Are you enthusiastic about what you do? Good. Excellent. That's inspiring to others, isn't it? To see you enthusiastic about what you do. Michael Singer says, you don't need to find the right job to be enthusiastic. Passion is your true nature. Passion is your spiritual essence. The more we unblock ourselves and allow that passion to flow, the more we're passionate about everything we do. How many of you would be excited about being passionate about everything you're doing? Absolutely. We can trigger that passion. I didn't sleep all that great last night. I don't know why. It was one of those choppy sleeping things. I don't know what caused it. It was like I was waking up every so often, and it's like, why am I keep waking up for some reason? And then I went back to think, was it something I ate? Was it this? Was it that? I don't know. But, it's raining outside. Things are a little slower feeling this morning. Well, I was like, I got to get some energy going here. I got to get some passion happening up in here. How do you do that? Well, you tune in. You tune in to that presence. And then you can act as if you're passionate. You can stir it up, as Paul said. Stir up the gift of God that is in you. Stir it up. Stir up that energy. Stir up that passion. Living passionate inspires others, and truth inspires others. He talks about being authentic, not saying what people want to hear unless it feels right. He says, ask yourself, what is my truth barometer telling me to say? What does my truth barometer say? And then speaking it not hurtfully, not arrogantly, but just telling our truth authentically. Not feeling like we need the approval of other people, but speaking our truth. How many of you know someone who is honest? You know that if you ask them, they're going to tell you the truth. They're not going to tell you just what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what they think and feel. Doesn't mean you have to agree with what they think and feel, but they're going to communicate their truth to you. Is that inspiring? You bet it is. Someone who speaks the truth. Just like all of our politicians speak the truth, speaking the truth. We want the world to change. We've got to be the change, right? Didn't Gandhi say that? You want to be the change you want to see, right? We want our politicians to be honest. Let's start with ourselves. Yes. Let's start being authentic ourselves. Sharing the truth, and in a kind, gentle way, but an honest way, not in an arrogant way. We're not right. It's our perspective. It's how we see it. It's how we feel about it. Doesn't mean we're right. It means this is what we're experiencing. This is our experience. Jesus said, let your words be yea or nay. Not a convoluted bunch of stuff that clouds the issue. Let it be truthful. Let it be truthful. I'd like to add something that I think inspires people. It's the last idea today that Dyer doesn't talk about, and it's being vulnerable. I think being vulnerable can be very inspiring to other people. But you have to choose who you're going to be vulnerable with. They have to be trustworthy. What do I mean by being vulnerable? I mean not pretending that you got it all together all the time. Not pretending that you are the spiritually evolved, advanced one all the time. Not pretending that you're the leader and you have all the answers. But being able to say to a friend or a trusted person, you know what, I'm feeling really sad today because of blah, blah, blah. Or I'm feeling really frustrated or annoyed right now because of blah, blah, blah. Or I'm feeling scared because of whatever. That's being vulnerable. And I think that's inspiring because people tend to think that's weakness. It's weak to feel sad. It's weak to feel fear. It's weak to feel insecurity. It's not weak to admit it to yourself. That's strength. It's weak to not see it in yourself. It's weak. It's strength to have the courage to share with somebody you trust and you're close with what you're feeling. That's strength. Because it takes strength to risk. And it's risky. When you share something that makes you vulnerable, that takes courage. That's risky because you don't know how they're going to respond. And let me tell you, how do you want to respond? Not with teaching. You want to listen when somebody does that. Oh, you're feeling sad because of da-da-da-da. That's listening. You don't want to teach. Well, what you need to do is you need to go to unity. You feel sad, you need to affirm that you're strong and unafraid. Here, let me give you this book. You need to read this. No. Listen. Let them feel understood. Let them feel heard. They need psychological air, and that may be all they need in that moment. I think that's inspiring when you are vulnerable to another person. I hear it when I share something on Sundays, I hear people say, I really appreciated when you shared that about yourself because it shows you're not perfect. And that means I don't have to be perfect either. Or if you're struggling with something like that, it means it's okay for me to struggle with something like that also. But as a leader, I am careful about what I share as well in public, because I have to have grown through it before I share it. I'm not going to share something that is so immediate that someone can use it against me. Amen. I'm going to share something I've grown through. You see, there's a difference. And I will never share it because I'm trying to get psychological help through my sharing when I'm doing it publicly. I don't do it for myself. I do it to inspire others. You see, that's the difference. Being vulnerable with someone you can trust and you're close to can be inspiring to them because now they will feel comfortable and safe sharing with you, hopefully. And they will go, wow, if she experiences that and is able to live her life the way she lives it, well, I can do the same. I can be honest with myself too and stop pretending that I've got it all together. I don't have to pretend that I'm Superwoman or Superman. No, you're always God living itself as you, but you also have your humanness. And you're growing. You're not there yet. You know, if you were there, then you wouldn't be here. You'd be in another dimension somewhere else, right? Helping somewhere else. You would be an avatar. For all the avatars, I invite you to stop levitating and come back to your seat, right? We're all growing. So being vulnerable. Are you vulnerable with yourself? We talk about that all the time. Are you vulnerable with yourself? Are you able to admit to yourself, I feel fear. I feel anxious. I feel insecure. I feel whatever it is that you feel. Sad. You got to be vulnerable with yourself before you can be vulnerable with somebody else. And let me tell you, that's strength. That's strength. When you become a master of yourself, the scripture says, a person who's a master of themselves is greater than anyone who can take a city. When you become a master of yourself and you're comfortable with whatever you feel inside yourself, nothing can disturb you ultimately. Nothing's going to stop you. Nothing will stop you when you are comfortable with yourself. Yeah, you might feel some anxiety or fear or something at times, anger, frustration, but it's not going to stop you because you know who you are. So you can inspire others, I think, by being vulnerable in a safe environment, So we're going to need to close now. Oh, Lordy, yes, we are, 41 minutes. Boy, I've run out at the mouth today. I've over-inspired. You've uninspired there. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to close with this quote by John Quincy Adams, our 6th president. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Let's get still.